I wish he'd have picked you. You'd have done better.
No.
Yeah, you would. You'd have done better.
Hello, I'm Stephen Graham, and I'm here at IndieWire to talk about Adolescence.
I'd love to ask you a little bit about casting for Adolescence, because you have a lot of alumni coming over from Boiling Point, but I'm so curious about what went into building this cast and this crew that was going to run this marathon with you.
I think personally, Phil, our amazing casting director, Shaheen Baig, who's just phenomenal, and Hannah and Mark at Warp, with all of the understanding that 99.9% of your work in any piece is done during a casting, I think. Do you know what I mean? You cast the right people. I always use the analogy of like being a football team. Soccer team. You know, you employ people and you bring people in who are wonderful within their positions because you know the qualities that they will bring. And then it's kind of creating a space and allowing them to be able to do what they do. And then it's also we had it. Okay. Mark Herbert from Warp, who's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful man. And I've known him for a long time. I've known him since This Is England. I knew that he would be integral to this piece, and Warp would be absolutely integral to this piece as boots on the ground. Do you know what I mean? And helping us set it up and helping us, because you know what a huge production it is. But we always, you know, him, myself, and Phil, and Joe Johnson, our fantastic series producer, and Hannah, my wife, and Emily. We always kind of had the agreement straight away from the get-go that there would be no dicks on this film. There would be no dicks involved, in the respect of, you know, don't be a dick. Treat people how you wish to be treated. Always have respect for everybody that's on that set, because we all have the right, and we've all earned the right to have the opportunity and to be there, and you must treat people as you would expect to be treated yourself. So that was one of our key components. Make sure that there was no dicks on set, you know what I mean? And then it was putting a team together, do you know what I mean? A team of players that we wanted to spend time with, but also we knew were massively creative. Our biggest search was to find Jamie. And that's where Shaheen and Phil were magnificent. Shaheen put out an open casting, and we wanted to find a young boy who wasn't, and no disrespect at all whatsoever, who wasn't really influenced by the industry, who didn't have a lot of experience. But what was great about Owen was that he hadn't done any professional acting before. He went to a little drama group in Manchester called Drama Mob, and that's where Shaheen found him. So we wanted to try and create opportunities for young boys and young girls, as you see that we have in all of the episode too, who hadn't had lots of experience. So we went to smaller, like, kind of managers and agents and little drama groups and things like that. That's what we reached out to more. And I think we had over 500 young lads for the role of Jamie, and then we narrowed it down to 5. And then I did a workshop with the 5. Phil had already took them through a grueling process in many ways, do you know what I mean, to try and see if they had the capabilities of being able to handle such a project. And you never know until you're there on the day. But there was something special about Owen, really something special. I think he's a once-in-a-generational talent, myself personally. And when we did the first kind of workshop, I looked at him, he looked at me, and I just said, look, from now on, I'm your dad and you're my son. And I just saw something register in his eyes, and he just kind of went, yeah, okay. So we picked the front of the camera team to the best of our ability. And then I've known Ashley for over 20 years. I love Ashley. He's wonderful. And I always felt that we hadn't seen Ashley's true potential. Look, Ashley's a young black man from London, and same as myself, I'm a young Scouse mixed race lad from Liverpool. Do you know what I mean? We can only play what's given to us on the page. We can only play the characters that people are writing in order for us to be able to play those people. And so he'd played a detective before, he'd played policeman before, but predominantly he had played characters from a certain background, you know what I mean? And I always knew there was a lot more to Ashley as an actor, and I wanted to take this opportunity to show the world what he's capable of. And then with respect to, let's say, Erin Doherty, Erin is just phenomenal. Me and Hannah had just spent a year working with Erin on 1,000 Blows, and she's a genius. She's wonderful. So we knew straight away that Erin would be magnificent in the role of Bryony. And she read the script, and Erin, Erin's like a little sister. Me and Anna just kind of asked her, and she jumped at the opportunity. Who wouldn't with such a wonderful script? And then all of the other kind of characters fitted into place, really. A lot of them are they're people who we know as well. Like Christine. I've known Christine, who plays my wife. I've known Christine. Our mothers were friends, and we're from the same area in Kirby. So I've known her for like all of my life, really. And we've never truly had the opportunity to work together. So Phil said straight away, Christine, it's Christine, isn't it? And I was like, wow, yeah, it's Christine. And so she came, and what she brought to that role was so beautiful. She has that desperation of every parent and every mother, and she carries herself so beautifully. And she has a wonderful kind of nervous energy as that character that she brought, you know what I mean? So I think it's kind of getting your team together and allowing them to play. That's what it is. It's creating an environment, putting us all in a sandbox and giving us all a load of toys and saying, now make a castle. And then on the other side of it, Matt Lewis, our amazing DOP, all hail. He has his team, and he's been with his team for a while now. We started this little journey 6 odd years ago with a short film set in a restaurant. That short film was the film that created all these opportunities and set the spark, do you know what I mean? And it was actually, if I'm really honest with you, it was a favor for Phil, because he wanted to be a director. And he said, I've worked with this DOP, he's brilliant, and he's had this idea, and we've come up with this concept of setting it in a restaurant and doing it in one shot. So I was like, all right, I'm in. He said, I'll need you for 5 days. And I went, no, I'll give you 3. And he's like, what? I went, I'll give you 3 days. So we made this little short, and then I gave it to my agent, Jane, and she showed it around the office. And I swear to God, literally within half an hour, 45 minutes, Phil had a meeting with someone at the agency, and he'd walked away with an agent from independent. So that little, and it's not normally the way you go, do you know what I mean? So there's always been something a little bit unique and a bit special about this whole process. And then Matt just went from strength to strength, and Matt's team are absolutely phenomenal. The whole of our crew, look, I've been very blessed. I love crews. I feel we're nothing without the crew. Do you know what I mean? I don't think the crew get as much recognition as they deserve half the time. For me personally, I love going in and saying a morning to the crew. And if you can see, look, if you've got a big burly grip or a spark who's holding a big light, and you've done a performance and they're crying at the end of it, you've done something right. Do you know what I mean? So basically, Matt and Joe Johnson and Phil, they put together a wonderful team behind the camera. Do you know what I mean? And that goes from everyone. Again, we kind of people who we've known, and we try to create opportunities. Our wonderful costume designer, Jess Schofield, we created an opportunity for Jess because we knew she had talent. And I think, we have an obligation when you're making stuff. You have an obligation to try and create opportunities for people who may not normally get those opportunities, and allowing them to have that moment in the sunshine. Wow, that's a hell of a long answer I've just given you, isn't it? But sorry, yeah, it's kind of assembling the team. It's the most important part of the job. Do you know what I mean? It's getting the right ingredients. It's like being a chef, but we've got a lot of chefs. So that was kind of how it all came about. And each and I mean this, each and every member, and Sarah Lucas, our amazing first. I mean, come on. Do you know what I mean? She was basically running a small country there with what she had to do. We had 320 kids, do you know what I mean? And they were all magnificent. And again, what Phil wanted to do, which is beautiful, is he wanted to make them feel a part of it and take ownership in a way. So he used over 150 kids from that school. He also had the wonderful idea for the song that hangs over episode 2. That's by the choir from the actual school. he had that idea straight away from the get-go. Do you know what I mean? He wanted to make them feel a part of the process, which is beautiful, especially in the community that we were working in. So that was basically how it kind of happened. Do you know what I mean? That was each and every single person was hand-selected and hand-picked, and every piece of the jigsaw was integral, because you don't have that beautiful picture that you have without one piece. And that goes from, you know, a runner right the way through to our sound designer. Do you know what I mean? It goes all the way through, and every single piece of the team were hand selected, and it was just a joyous experience for everyone. Everyone felt a part of that process, and everyone was listened to as well.
And I think it tells. And I also heard that Claire Ramsey, the makeup head, was maybe responsible for my favorite line in the show.
Yeah. Again, see that Claire was doing my makeup and stuff, and I'd worked with Claire on 1,000 Blows, and that's, you know, that's where we brought Shaheen from, who's wonderful. Our whole team are wonderful, and me and Claire, you know, I get on really well with Claire. She's a wonderful woman, and we would, and I don't, you know, I always talk to her in the morning about what's going on and what I'm doing today and what we're doing, and she gives a beautiful insight as well. It's a really nice relationship. And she said that line. She went, do you know what? I just find it curious how it's always the perpetrator and never the victim whose name we hear the most of. And I just went, wow. I went, shit. Claire, do me a favor, get a pen. And she was like, what? She's lovely. She's an Irish woman. She was great. She's like, what? And I went, get a pen, quick, get a pen. And she was like, what? And I went, write down what you've just said. And she was like, what? I went, just write it down. And so she wrote it down. And this is where, within a piece like this, you know, the best idea wins, or the best idea is selected. I phoned Jack and I said, Jack, listen to this. Claire's just said this. Look, we need to find a place where Faye can say this line. And I explained it to him, and I quoted it, and he was like, that's genius. He said, that's beautiful. He said, I'll find the right place. He said, but that's absolutely beautiful. And so you see, that's what I mean by there was no egos on this set at all, whatsoever, never. Whereas Jack can take a line from a makeup artist and incorporate it into the piece because he thinks it's a beautiful line. And also what we allowed in, and what happens in that situation, is everybody feels the ownership, like we've said. So she felt she could say this, and we listened to the opinion of a woman, because it's then a line which is said by a woman, do you know what I mean? And it should be incorporated into our piece, and it was done so seamlessly, I felt.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and delivered with such weariness. That feels very true.
And the great thing about that as well is, you know, Faye and Claire are then on the same bus, so they have this beautiful conversation about this line and about how that, you know, the empowerment that gives them, and how they could put across their point of views from their perspective, which is their truth. So it really had a lot of resonance then, that line. Like, I'm so happy that you picked that up, because I think that's one of the beautiful moments for me of how this process works.
Each episode is dotted with a ton of them. And I'm curious how much that comes out of the rehearsal process for a project like this, where you're spending a week on the text, and then you're spending a week coming to grips with the blocking and all of the technical stuff. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about kind of like what evolves and what gets picked up as like you're learning to dance with Matt and Lee and the boom operators and all of that.
Again, it's a unique process because we have that first week, and it's like getting a brand new text. It's like having a brand new play. And that's what it feels like. It feels like we're a company who have just been given this beautiful play, and now we sit and we analyze it, and we destruct it, and we really make it our own. So again, it's that taking ownership, but we sit around and we read it, and we're very fortunate because we had Jack for the first 3 days of every week, and myself as one of the creators, but we had Jack sat with us going through every single beat. And for instance, you know, that first episode, I remember we were sat in the house just talking as a family, and developing our relationship and creating a beautiful backstory. We had like a whole day with Phil in the house, just for, you know, and when you look at it, the only kind of first bit you see in the house is that opening. So we had the whole day to be able to talk and construct these wonderful relationships, and then go through it piece by piece by piece. So the beauty of that then is we can ask questions because we have the right to hear. And we can ask questions of like, so why am I saying that? Or what does that mean? And then you really collaborate together. So you again, it's that taking ownership. You feel a part of completely. Do you know what I mean? And in that respect as well, Jack had that beauty of kind of asking Jamie how he would speak or what he would say, and then incorporating that into the text. Do you know what I mean? So Jack's writing as well has a beauty where it looks like it can be improvised, Jack's stuff, but because it's so beautifully written. And to me, Jack is the best at constructing a character which suffers from the human condition and then being able to deconstruct that character. He has a wonderful ability to do that, you know what I mean? And in that process, we can all talk about the subtext and about what's happening and where we've come from and why each word is completely relevant, because it has its own rhythms as well, Jack's writing. Do you know what I mean? And you make them your own. So we had that wonderful ability to really dive into the text and understand the subtext and really make it as natural and as real as possible. So you have that for a whole week. And then you get into the beauty of what is that wonderful experience of that ballet that is created. Do you know what I mean? And again, with that, Phil and Matt have spent weeks, if not months, meticulously going over the possibilities of what can happen. Look, for this, I remember hearing the story, and it was very funny about how Matt, Phil, and Sarah were in the little car driving from the house to the studio to see how long that journey would take. Do you know what I mean? And I think they were like, it's 4 minutes, we're going to have to cut it down a little bit. And then they did it again. They did it over and over. But to find the time and to make sure that they were meticulous within the time frame of getting from A to B. And also the camera moves that were involved. So they go over it meticulously for a long time. Do you know what I mean? Months and months and months. And then Matt's coming up with ideas with his whole great team. Do you know what I mean? His riggers and his best boy and all of that, and all of his whole crew that he has. They're going over that and working it out, and they have the opportunity to get the toys out. So that opening, where it goes from the lovely conversation with Faye and Ashley, and then it gets attached to the crane and it drives up a housing estate. And to me, have you seen that beautiful film La Haine? Well, to me, it's kind of like La Haine. It's a northern council estate, housing estate set up, and all of a sudden you're moving through it, and the beauty, the way that camera moves, and we see the vastness, and now we're taking on this journey, and you're thinking, hang on, we've just gone from just two coppers talking to each other to now, where are we going here? What's happening? And then the camera moves up, and then we go into the house. And that was always my idea when I explained what it was that I could see in my head to Phil and Jack in the first place, especially to Phil in the back of the car where we came up with the idea. I wanted to grab the audience by the scruff of the neck, and that camera moving up through that house and going into a boy's bedroom and having armed police point guns at him. I wanted the audience to go, what's going on here? Do you know what I mean? And that was kind of what we were aiming for. And then you spend the whole week kind of making the space your own, but also working with Matt and with our sound department. Because don't forget, we know that you don't just have one camera pointing. You have the camera, you have, what an amazing skill it takes for a focus puller to be able to do what he's done. Do you know what I mean? In this, it's next level. And we had Matt and Lee who were passing the camera to each other. So it's like passing the baton, and you'd watch rehearsal, and you'd watch one pass the camera to the other, then jump in a car and go to the next location or destination where they could then hand the camera to each other again seamlessly. So you have that wonderful, beautiful process of working with them. And then by the time you get to the end of that week, we throw one up and we just do, we have a technical run, we have a tech rehearsal, and we shoot it just for shits and giggles. But you've spent the whole week kind of, it's in your muscle memory. Do you know what I mean? So it becomes a different kind of thing. So your physicality of how you know to move around the space is part of how you speak as well in your lines. It just kind of happens like that. And Matt's so amazing and so brilliant, and so is Lee, that you're not really aware of them at all, which sounds ridiculous because of the technical elements that go into this piece. But you forget the camera's there. Do you know what I mean?
No, I do. And, to take your soccer metaphor from earlier, it's muscle memory. And by the time you're in the Champions League match, you're just focused.
Nice. I like the way you said Champions League. Yeah. And it is, and look, and I can be very anal, but in many respects, that's the beauty of football, because the ball is passed from one player to another. Let's say to create a goal, let's pick legends. You know what I mean? As the ball comes across the pitch, Kenny Dalglish, my particular hero, is in a specific place in time to hit the ball in a particular way, and then you're getting into physics. Do you know what I mean? And the way the ball and the curl and the trajectory of the ball goes into that top corner at that specific time. It's all moments within time. And if he's not at that specific point at that specific time, he can't receive the ball and make that beautiful shot. The same respect is kind of what happens with us. Do you know what I mean? We're moving within this space and time, and it takes on I sound ridiculous, but it does become an ethereal experience. Do you know what I mean? I've never been more zen in my life as an actor when I'm in this process, because you have to be present. You have to be truly present. It takes on a meditative state, because you're completely aware of your surroundings in many ways. So your awareness is heightened, because you know that there's so many technical elements to what we're doing. But in the same respect, you forget it, and you just glide through in a zen-like state, and you're listening constantly to your other players, because acting is all about reacting. Unless you're one of them actors who just perform dead cool and shit like that, but that's not what we were doing. So it's all about reacting. It's all about listening, and in this process, we become this one breathing machine. Do you know what I mean? Which sounds ridiculous, but it is the way it is. We all jump on the train at the beginning together, and we're all taken off to that next destination. And the energy is palpable, because you're mixing both of the mediums. Do you know what I mean? You have that kind of instant response and that energy that you get from theatre as an actor, but you're using the techniques and the kind of meticulous truth of film and television acting. But yet your whole crew, no one wants to drop the ball, literally. Do you know what I mean? So you feel the support and the energy to make sure that we make it through to the end. It's an amazing experience. Every actor and every crew member should try it at some point in their life. It's unbelievable.
I'm curious, as a creator of the show, how involved you are in the post process and in picking the takes.
With respect to that, when you think of episode 1, I think we did maybe 10 takes. That was the one where it worked properly. So we kind of, our aim is to do 2 takes a day, because of the setup and everything and the time that it takes to reset and things like that. And you can be set so far down a take, and you either have to stop, or, if you're quite close to the beginning, you can carry on and go again. But with respect to it, that first one, I think we did 10 takes, or maybe 11 takes. There might have been a stop-start once or twice. So I think with that first one, what you see is take 2. And everything just seamlessly fell into place. And it just seemed really, it was right. It was tangible. And we all kind of, I think there was a possibility of there being another front runner, but me, from the heart, I knew that 2 was the one. And I just knew it was the one performance-wise for all of us. But I just knew that was the one. And technically, it was a great take. So we knew that. When we come to take 2, when we come to episode 2, the take you see is the final take. That was take 14, and that was Friday afternoon. Now you look at episode 2, and it's the passing of the drone, and it's the drone that goes over the estate, and then it comes down.
Yeah, I talked to Matt about that, and about hanging off of chase vehicles and all kinds of crazy things.
Yeah. jumping into the lovely machine that they'd created where he jumps in it on the seat and he gets pushed, and yeah, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. But with respects to that as well, the elements weren't our friend. So the elements, the wind, you can't fly that drone in terrible wind conditions. Do you know what I mean? So we didn't really have the shot at all. We had versions of it. We had a version where Eddie was just stood at the school, so the camera came and finished because we couldn't. And then we had one where it was really shaky. So we never, ever had a complete take. And there was also moments of performances from the cast as well, which had never quite hit the mark. We had one possibility, but it never quite hit that sweet spot. Yeah. And so that final take had this energy of its own, and that was the take that we got. And every single element, and this is what I say, this is when it becomes slightly ethereal and something beyond, do you know what I mean, what we can control, obviously. So you have to hand it over to an extent, do you know what I mean? Because it becomes something that we can't control. And in that final episode, everything just seemed to knock into position, and it just flowed beautifully. And to the extent where you see, and to give my perspective as Stephen the actor, but also as Stephen the producer, I'm sat in the van from the word action. So I've got the radio in the van and I'm hearing it over on the walkie. And so I can just hear Sarah going, okay, so going up the corridor now, he's walking through, and that's it. That's it. Camera's moving. We need to be on the move. Everybody get ready for the classroom. So it's great to hear it from this perspective, because you really, it's like that. You know the way a swan moves beautifully and gracefully across a lake, but yet its legs are going about 1,000,000 miles an hour in order for it to look so beautiful. That is what you hear on my side of it when you hear Sarah and their team making this whole thing work. And so I'm listening to it, and then I hear, and I've said this a few times, and I hear, okay, so the drone's up, and we're going, and the drone's on the move. And so I'm like, oh, good, okay, they've got the drone. Okay, that's great. The drone's going. So we're near the end of the take then. And then I go, shit, now it's me. It's my turn. Okay. And then I hear, and I see the drone coming, and I'm like, oh, there's the drone. Shit. Okay, there's the drone. Okay. Right, get into Eddie. And then so I've got the flowers there, and I'm looking, and I'm like, oh, they're gonna catch it. Oh, the lads have got it. Oh, boom. And then you have to lock in, and then it's my open the door, and then get out and walk towards the flowers, and then just be in that moment of the grief that he's feeling himself, and the camera comes round, and then I'm slightly aware of it, but not completely aware of it, because I know it's there, but I'm doing this, and then I just there, cut, and I'm like, and Matt's like, we've got it. But the thing, we had it, but everyone back at base, they lost picture. So they never knew that we'd completed it. So they were in a panic themselves, do you know what I mean? They'd lost, as soon as it got connected to the drone started to take off. They lost picture. So Phil and Hannah and Mark and everyone, they had no idea that we'd got it. Joe Johnson had no idea. And then she just comes running over and jump. Yeah, it was beautiful. So the only time it actually worked was the time that you see it work.
Incredible. Especially like all, just the logistics of, long range signals to feed the picture or not.
Yeah, so what you don't see as well is you don't see the lovely fella sat in the little open air truck flying the drone, do you know what I mean? Going down that road, looking up at the drone, thinking, and it's all of those elements have to slot into place beautifully. We all have to be at that specific moment in time for it to exist the way it does.
So y'all did 2 takes over the course of a day?
Yes, yeah, we'd go for 2 a day, but sometimes obviously there'd be a stop-start. So when you get to something like, say, episode 4, the take that you see again is the final take, but it's take 16 because we'd had quite a few stop-starts as well in certain places. But with that one as well, the beauty of that one is we knew we had a really good take in the can. We knew we did. We knew we had it. And Phil just said, look, this one is... It was kind of like the end of a summer camp, do you know what I mean? No, there was just a huge kind of sentiment about it, and that sentimental feeling of it was our last day of being together, do you know what I mean? That was it. And it just, I don't know, there was just a freedom within that particular take, which again was one of those wonderful special things. And Phil just said, look, we've got it. Let's just be free. Let's just see what happens. Let's just go and enjoy ourselves. Again, it's like a football manager saying, right, you've done all the hard work. You're in the final. Don't be afraid. Just go out there and express yourself, and just keep an eye on each other, pass the ball to each other, make those runs. And that's kind of how it felt, that last one. It was a joy to be a part of.
I'm curious, sort of in the run of putting together 14 takes, 16 takes. What do you do sort of when you're not being Eddie? How do you sort of keep the energy up or get in and out of that space to perform? Like, is it just sort of headphones on, I've got to decompress, or?
That's a great question. And how we kind of made it personally, but also the setup was, we had like our base camp where all the trailers were and everything. Look, there was always a kind of sense of equality on this job, hugely. So we had like a great base camp, and we were all together. And Joe Johnson, our wonderful series producer, and Emily, again, one of our execs from Warp, they created, it was like a little park and stuff like that, in the sense, you had all the trailers together in that one collective, in that one space. But then, because we had a lot of young people on the set, not necessarily with episode 4, but because then you've got the lads with the bikes, but because we had a lot of young people on set, and these were kind of developing their little relationships together, we had a lovely little area, and it was a really unusual. It was a kind of a warm summer in England. We had the sun out quite a lot, so there was a lovely little space where they all kind of sat and played cards, and because Owen was a champion swing ball player, so they had the swing ball set up, and it was a real kind of, and I'm not just saying it was a real kind of family atmosphere. Do you know what I mean? Their parents were there as well with the chaperones, and everybody felt really, like I said back in the beginning, everyone felt the right to be there, and that we wanted them there, and we all wanted to be there. So it was a really nice space. When we'd finish the intensity of the scenes, we'd go back and you would decompress, just chilling out with everyone. Do you know what I mean? And kind of, and myself as well. I had my Winnebago, but the door was always open. I was very rarely. I like to meditate in the morning. I had to tell people to just give me 5 minutes. Do you know what I mean? Because it was constantly, which was great. It was like Piccadilly Circus, and that was lovely. But it was an important part of it, I feel, because it's so, the stuff that we were doing was so intense. So you need that release. So it's nice to be surrounded by people in that respect, for me personally. And then I have those little times. Look, I've been very fortunate in my career. Do you know what I mean? I've worked with absolute legends, icons, and heroes. And Gary Oldman, for example, I remember how kind of wonderful Gary was. Very generous with his time. And also, would talk and have conversations with me, and I'd watch him as well. And it was something that I'd kind of done from a young age myself, but I'd watch how he'd just go away and he'd just spend a couple of moments, and then he'd turn around and he'd kind of be in that zone and be in that present state that he needed to be in. Do you know what I mean? So I think you learn a lot from these kind of people, personally. Do you know what I mean? Every day's a school day. So that's kind of how I work as well. And then you kind of, you just tee the rest of your team up. Do you know what I mean? You're the captain for that particular day. Do you know what I mean? So you got to get your players ready.
And you mentioned sort of trying to involve the community. Were you guys shooting around Doncaster in Yorkshire? Like, where did you guys shoot?
We shot in a place called Pontefract, which is up north. And we also used this. Our studio was fantastic. The name of it has escaped me, but it's originally used for bands who are getting ready to go and perform big gigs. So I think we had like Pink Floyd were there before us and things like that. Do you know what I mean? Which none of the kids appreciated, but we did. So yeah, we can't in that area. We spent a lot of time in that area. And then you try and involve and use as many people from that area as you can. Do you know what I mean? I think that's important with productions of today. I think it's important to go into an area and try and create some kind of connection and relationship with the people of the area that you're working in. Do you know what I mean? I think it's integral. So we had we had a really great relationship with the school, and we set up a lot of stuff with the school and with the students at the school. So that was great.
The last question I had for you, sir, is the answer to this might just be no. And that's fine. But one of the things that so impressed me about this show is that you find it's not just doing sort of a one take for the sake of the gimmick. You're finding the right moments for that. Not the first meeting of the psychologist and Jamie, it's like the fifth. Sort of really counterintuitive but right moments to sort of put us in a pressure cooker. And I'm curious if all of those occurred to you in the car with Phil, or like kind of did it take some sort of working out back and forth between you and Jack to kind of figure out, okay, these are the right spaces for us to play in, if that question makes sense?
Great question. Yeah, and of course it makes sense. But what I would say is it's an amalgamation of everything you just said, because it's Phil and Matt working on it and talking about how the camera is going to move. Then it's kind of Jack writing certain elements, especially kind of Jack had a wonderful way of, he really embraced the process of it being one camera and it being one continuous take. So in his writing, there was lots of guidance and lots of pointing in order for us to be able to get to these certain things. But one specific thing that sticks to mind was in the interrogation scene, Jack literally just wrote, while Owen is being strip searched, the camera will remain on Eddie's face. And that was his note. But then in the same respect, you know, when we got into the space and we're moving the camera around, and obviously there's many different stipulations as well. One, because of Owen's age and to maintain his modesty in many aspects, that was going to happen behind a blue curtain where he could get changed, and you know, so nobody would see him in that situation, which is rightly so. Do you know what I mean? Of course. So then that means me just looking at a blue curtain, and me having to feel these things through the blue curtain. But then what's beautiful about Jack's writing is our actor, who was wonderful, and his name's escaped me and I feel terrible, but he was wonderful as that sergeant. He was brilliant. It just, and your left finger, and no, you're right. He was amazing. He was beautiful. So I just listened to what he was saying to my son, and that really helped me. So that's the beauty of Jack's writing. You know, the words he chose, like, you know, can you lift up your scrotum and stuff like that. So the visual image for Eddie to be witnessing this and seeing this was rather powerful in that respect for me, because I just imagined that was my Alfie in that situation. And I think we used the second take because my Alfie was there on the very first day, so I had my boy with me on that day. Do you know what I mean? So that helps through the writing, but then also as Phil and Matt was integral to this as well. As we're moving the camera around, it's kind of making a choice of whose face to stay on. And that beauty of kind of, you know, in conventional editing, and rightly so, you know, you get both perspectives of the conversation. So you see somebody talking and you see somebody listening. But what we found with this was it's just as beautiful to stay on someone's face while the other person is talking, so we can see how it's having an effect on them. And I think that was really used beautifully within episode 3 as the camera dynamics moved around. Do you know what I mean? And then it's kind of, and then it's Phil and Matt who make those decisions. But then you also have someone like Hannah, my wife, who's one of the exec producers and who's fantastic as our Mrs. Oh, what? Oh, shit, I can't forget what Anna played. Hang on, I'm so sorry. What did Anna play? Mrs. Oh. Yes, yeah, I'll have to get it. You'd have to bear with me and get a second. I'll have to get this right, or she will kill me. What was it? Pandora, Mrs. Yeah, thank you. Seamless. So, you know, then you've got Mrs. Bailey, who Hannah played, and she was magnificent. But you've got Hannah sat behind the monitor as an executive producer, and then saying to Phil, "Oh, look, maybe if we just stayed on our own for a little bit longer." And again, that's the beauty of Phil, who had no ego, do you know what I mean? In many respects on this, it was kind of like, yeah, that's a really good idea. So you listen to, you know, he was able to listen to other people's ideas as well as have his own, which were fantastic, and incorporate them. So in answer to that question, it was an amalgamation of all of those things. And that's how we kind of, you know, that's how we kind of did it. And I think that goes to the same respect with everything. it was kind of like I've said before, the best idea on the day wins because everybody just wants what's best for the production.
I think that's a beautiful place to end. Stephen, thank you so much, sir.
Thanks for having me. Thank you very much. It's been lovely. Thank you.